On Cabe this morning, I'm going to be speaking to one of the most influential economic advisors to both nation states and global financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund over the last 3 decades. He is well known popularly because of his links with Bono and his championing of the role of Western aid and philanthropy in helping to solve developmental problems. He's an American economist and director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, where he holds a title of university professor. That's the highest ranked title that Columbia bestows on his faculty. Now, he's known as one of the world's leading experts on economic development and the fight against poverty. I beg your pardon. Professor Jeffrey Sachs is my guest today. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And good to have you.
Thank you.
You've been in town for the past few days. What have you been up to?
I'm here for several meetings. I'll meet with the government today to talk about the general economic situation. And in the last couple of days, in addition to the pleasure of giving a public lecture at the University of Ghana, I've been in a series of meetings about using information technology to help propel development and especially to help propel public health in Ghana. So it's quite exciting, very interesting, new technologies, new ways to do business in health sector delivery that are low cost and very effective, using smartphones and telemedicine and other parts of the new technologies.
So you've been meeting with government officials as well. What have you been gathering on the economy?
Well, I have not really had detailed meetings on the economy. I had the great pleasure to meet a wonderful leader, President Kufuor, former President Kufuor, a couple of days ago. He's a favorite of mine. He's been a great leader in Africa and in the world. Today I'll meet with government officials to talk about the economic situation.
You've been a former advisor to the International Monetary Fund, and I'm sure one of your daily routine is to be reading about world economies. What have you been reading about Ghana?
Well, I think that Ghana is in a good position right now for these new goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and that is to finally end poverty in this country, because Ghana made good progress during the past 15 years. I got to see a lot of it. I was Kofi Annan's advisor at the United Nations, one of the world's great statesmen and son of this country. So I came here often and I saw a lot of progress in Ghana, but I think a lot more progress can be made. And the economy has had its bumps, with continuing inflation, with the ups and downs of budget deficits and financial stresses. And I want to see Ghana grow rapidly and decisively to end poverty in the coming 15 years. So what I really want to talk with the government about is the long-term budgeting and investment profile so that Ghana can build out the infrastructure that it needs, the power grid, electrification for everybody, more advanced transport network, good fiber optics, health and education sector, all the things that need to be invested in during the coming 15 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
When did you last visit Ghana?
I come every year or two. I don't remember exactly the last visit, but it's pretty regular. So I have a chance to keep up. I plan to keep coming every year with this wonderful hospitality and a great chance to speak with the leading scientists and academics here, as well as with the government.
Prof, in the lead up to the 2012 elections, you were on record to have said that, and I'm going to quote that to you,
Sure.
that you were of the conviction that good governance in the past and oil production is likely to help Ghana reach all the Millennium Development Goals toward ending extreme poverty and child mortality. Fast forward to today, Ghana has fewer than 5 per 1,000 birth rates on child mortality. What's your view on that?
Well, Ghana did make huge progress in reducing poverty, so it was called the first country in this region to meet the goal of cutting poverty by half. And health conditions have improved a lot, but I think they can go even farther. And it's a matter of now deploying the best technologies and really focusing. Part of the problem for Ghana has been the budget deficit keeps getting squeezed, and then IMF programs and tightening and so forth. And I believe that what is quite basic for a country in Ghana's situation, which is a developing country aspiring to make very, very rapid progress, is to have a good medium term, that means say 5-year ahead budget that can really support the investments that are needed in this country. Now, next year, more oil will be coming online. The world price is not what it was a couple of years ago, so the great bonanzas from the oil development aren't going to be as high as some people hoped a couple of years ago, but there will still be more revenues, a stronger situation, a chance for faster growth. And I also very much encourage Ghana to reach out to new partners, to China, to India, and to others to strengthen financial relations so that there can be more inflow of foreign investment and also long-term borrowing at low interest rates.
In the quest to reducing extreme or eradicating extreme poverty, there's still a number of rural areas that are quite poverty endemic that needs a lot of investments. How do we get that? Well,
I think the point that you're making, that this is now pockets of poverty, is very important. We work in the north in a site near Tamale as part of the Savannah Accelerated Development Authority, SADA. This is a very good project because it says the north is poor, the north needs targeted investments. What we've seen is significant agricultural potential, but transport conditions, communications, education, healthcare all need to be strengthened. That's a public sector responsibility, in my view, to an important extent. The business sector can help modernize, improve productivity of agriculture. It can help to develop new businesses. But it really has to be the government that has the responsibility on improving infrastructure. And infrastructure is the base for a more productive economy. So I think the idea that you're suggesting of saying, well, what about this area, what about that area, is a proper answer.
You think it's isolated?
It's not isolated because there are still several regions in the country that don't have the infrastructure they need, especially in rural areas where you don't even have electrification for covering a population. And even in the major areas, the consistency of the power grid remains a challenge. So these are investment challenges. They require finance. Finance is going to require borrowing. Then you have the question, how does Ghana borrow but not get into a debt crisis? And that, I think, also requires good partnership with long-term financiers. I have my eye on China consistently because China is funding a lot of long-term infrastructure in Africa at low interest rates. We'll be in Guinea later this week. China is financing the hydropower projects in Guinea, which are bringing electrification to Conakry and to other parts of Guinea for the first time ever. So it's those long-term projects that I think are very significant. Infrastructure for transport in this country is very important. And also, of course, cities like Accra and Kumasi are growing very fast, and the infrastructure here has to be very functional. It has to be up to date. It has to be smart technology using information technology to make the power grid, the transport networks work so that the traffic jams are not unbelievable. So there are lots of things that need to be done, but I think these things are all within reach. The skills in this country are tremendous. The number of engineers and quality managers that can lead this is growing all the time and is strong. So I'm optimistic.
I'm happy to hear you talk about our resorts to the International Monetary Fund, especially because for several years you played an advisory role to the International Monetary Fund. What sort of advice were you giving them with regards to Africa?
Well, I'm an advisor in a informal way, which means I'm often a complainer because I give advice, but it's not often, it's not always saying, you're doing a great job. It's saying, please change direction. So with respect to Africa, what I've said consistently to the IMF is it's not good enough just to say, keep your deficit under control, don't borrow, and then leave so many countries in Africa without the basic infrastructure that is needed for rapid development. In other words, the framework that the IMF should be working on with Ghana and with other countries in Africa is a growth framework, not simply a balanced budget framework. And so I've been persistently saying, even having African countries borrow more makes sense. Don't just keep everything so restricted if the borrowing is directed towards high priorities, especially electrification, a modern power sector, modern transport sector. These are essential. So my main debate with the IMF over the years has been over two things. One, I said, give debt relief when countries are in trouble, and that finally became the policy. And the second is more borrowing, more financing to build out the infrastructure faster, because it's not good enough just to say stability is our goal. The real goal is rapid economic development.
And is that to say that you are in total support of Ghana's resource to the International Monetary Fund for financial assistance or technical assistance, if you call it?
Well, having an IMF program is okay if the content of the program is good. So I always want to look at the details of what's agreed. And going forward, my recommendation, now there are elections coming up, there'll be a government that will have a new mandate, whichever party wins. But there will be a new mandate, and I hope that it's a very growth-oriented framework, because my main point is that Africa has to catch up. And to catch up, it means deploying technology. To deploy technology means a lot of investment. I'd like to see the investment rate in Africa roughly double as a share of income. Right now it's about 20% of national income across Africa. In Asia, it's been running at about 40% of national income. The difference is, therefore, Asia's growing a lot faster than Africa, and I want to see Africa get into that fast lane in that way at a consistent base.
You talked about continuous borrowing. Now, government of Ghana has borrowed some $25 billion in the past 8 years alone, and the opposition, it's a figure of the opposition that is doubting. They think the figure is some $40 billion. But even for $25 billion in a span of 8 years, is that okay?
Everything about borrowing is what are the terms and what is it used for. If you borrow basically to run a budget deficit that is just reflecting the fact that government is overspending on consumption or making transfer payments or not collecting taxes, that's no good. You run up debt, but you're not building the economy. If the borrowing is for long-term investment for the power sector, the energy sector, for education, for health, then I would say yes.
We were on the international bond market sometime last year to raise, I think, about $1 billion or so at a coupon rate of 10.75%.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
Could we have gotten any better?
Probably not through the bond market, but through other kinds of financing.
Was it indiscreet on the part of our leaders?
Not indiscreet, but I wouldn't encourage it. And the reason I wouldn't encourage it is that 10% is too high to pay. And so you can't base a development policy on 10% interest rates. That's just unaffordable. And what I would suggest is...
Well, that was clearly based on prevailing market conditions and also our own economic indicators.
Exactly. But I wouldn't go to the market for borrowing. I would go to official or development finance very aggressively, very systematically. I would look to partnerships with China, with Korea, with Japan, with places where interest rates are incredibly low. You know, nearly zero interest rates right now. But of course, not if you just float a bond in a commercial way, because Ghana's creditworthiness is questioned. But if you go to official financing and make a partnership with China, the China Development Bank, for example, say we want to build more infrastructure, China can help us do that, let's expand our financing. Those interest rates are very, very low.
Is it as easy as you make it sound? Obviously, our leaders may have considered all those options, right?
It's not easy, but I think it's possible, and I think more can be done. Ghana is a very attractive place for business. China, of course, is investing all over Africa. I'd like to see them